In a small coastal town surrounded by the soothing sounds of waves and salty sea air, there lived a young woman named Maya. She was the kind of person who blended into crowds effortlessly, not because she didn't stand out, but because she preferred it that way. Maya had always been shy, choosing books over conversations, quiet evenings over noisy parties, and solitude over social gatherings. Her days were simple. She worked at the local library, helped her neighbors when they needed it, and spent most of her free time reading or taking long walks along the beach. The beach was where Maya felt most at peace. The rhythmic crash of the waves against the shore seemed to echo the steady beat of her own heart. It was her sanctuary, a place where she could escape the world's noise and let her thoughts wander freely. One summer evening, as the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, casting golden hues across the water, Maya found herself walking barefoot along the shoreline. The sand felt cool beneath her feet, and the breeze carried with it the faint scent of salt and seaweed. As she strolled, lost in thought, something unusual caught her eye. A figure sitting on a large rock near the edge of the tide line. Normally, Maya would have turned around or walked in the opposite direction, avoiding any chance of interaction. But tonight, something about the stranger intrigued her. He wasn't from around here. His clothes looked different, more rugged, like he'd been traveling for days. His backpack rested beside him, and he seemed completely absorbed in watching the waves roll in. Curiosity got the better of Maya, and instead of turning away, she hesitated for a moment before continuing down the path toward him. As she approached, the man glanced up and offered her a warm smile. "Beautiful evening, isn't it?" he said, his voice carrying a hint of adventure and warmth. Maya nodded shyly, clutching the book she'd brought with her tightly to her chest. "Yes," she replied softly, almost whispering. "It's one of my favorite times of day." The man extended his hand. "I'm Ethan," he introduced himself. "Just passing through." "Maya," she murmured, shaking his hand briefly before pulling hers back quickly, feeling slightly awkward. Most people didn't strike up conversations with strangers on the beach, especially not someone like Maya, who usually avoided such situations altogether. Ethan seemed unfazed by her reserved nature. Instead, he leaned back against the rock and gestured toward the ocean. "You come here often? You seem like you belong to this place." Maya blinked, surprised by the observation. No one had ever described her that way before. "I guess so," she admitted after a pause. "It's peaceful here. Helps me think." For a while they sat in comfortable silence, both gazing out at the endless expanse of water. Then slowly, Ethan began talking about his travels, the places he'd seen and the stories he'd collected along the way. He spoke of bustling cities, remote villages, towering mountains, and sprawling deserts. Each word painted vivid pictures, in Maya's mind, transporting her far beyond the confines of her quiet little town. Though Maya rarely spoke during these exchanges, Ethan didn't seem to mind. He noticed how intently she listened, her eyes wide with wonder as he shared tales of distant lands. Occasionally, he'd ask her questions, what she liked to read, what she dreamed of doing someday, and though her answers were short and hesitant, they revealed glimpses of a thoughtful, imaginative soul hidden beneath her quiet exterior. Over the next few days, their paths crossed again and again. Sometimes it was intentional, Ethan seeking her out at the library or finding her on the beach, but other times it felt like fate. They started meeting regularly, sharing bits of their lives with each other. Maya learned that Ethan was a writer, documenting his journeys in journals filled with sketches and notes. In return, she showed him her favorite spots in town, the cozy cafe tucked between two old buildings, the hidden trail that led to a breathtaking view of the cliffs, and the tiny bookstore where she often browsed for hours. With each encounter, Maya found herself opening up just a little more. Ethan had a way of making her feel safe, like she could be herself without fear of judgment. For the first time in years, she laughed openly, shared her thoughts without hesitation, and even told him about the dreams she'd kept locked away, dreams of writing her own stories someday, though she doubted anyone would ever want to read them. But as much as Maya enjoyed their time together, a part of her couldn't shake the feeling that this was temporary. Ethan was a traveler, someone who thrived on movement and change. He belonged to the open road, not to a sleepy seaside town. And yet, despite knowing this, Maya couldn't help but hope. For what exactly, she wasn't sure. All she knew was that Ethan made her feel things she hadn't felt in a long time. Excitement, curiosity, and maybe even something deeper. One afternoon, as they sat side by side on the beach, Ethan turned to her with a wistful expression. "This place is magical," he said, looking out at the waves. "But I can't stay forever. My journey calls me elsewhere." Maya's heart sank, though she tried to hide it. "I understand," she replied, forcing a smile. "You're meant for bigger things than this little town." Ethan studied her face for a moment, sensing the sadness behind her words. "Will you miss me?" he asked gently. Maya hesitated, unsure of how to answer. Would she miss him? Of course, but admitting it aloud felt too vulnerable, too risky. So instead she simply nodded. "A little," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan smiled, though there was a flicker of something unspoken in his eyes. "Well, then I'll have to make sure I leave you with something worth remembering." And with that, their conversation shifted back to lighter topics, leaving Maya to wonder if she'd imagined the fleeting look of longing that passed between them. Whatever it meant, one thing was certain. Ethan's presence had already left an indelible mark on her heart. The days that followed Ethan's announcement of his impending departure felt bittersweet for Maya. On one hand, she cherished every moment they spent together, knowing it might be their last. On the other hand, the looming goodbye weighed heavily on her heart, casting a shadow over even the happiest of their shared experiences. She tried to push those thoughts aside, telling herself that this was just how life worked. People came and went, leaving traces of themselves behind, but never truly staying. Ethan seemed determined to make the most of his remaining time in the town. He accompanied Maya to all her favorite places, soaking in the charm of the seaside community as if trying to memorize every detail. They visited the old lighthouse perched on the cliffs, where Ethan marveled at the panoramic view of the ocean, stretching endlessly into the horizon. "It's like standing at the edge of the world," he said, leaning against the railing as the wind tousled his hair. Maya nodded silently, her eyes fixed on him rather than the scenery. She couldn't help but notice how alive he looked, how the salty breeze seemed to energize him in ways she'd never seen before. One evening they found themselves back at the beach, the very spot where they had first met. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple. Ethan sat cross-legged on the sand, sketching in his journal while Maya curled up nearby with a book. Every now and then, he'd pause to glance at her, as though capturing her image in his mind alongside the words he wrote. For a brief moment, Maya allowed herself to imagine what it would be like if Ethan decided to stay, if he chose her quiet little town over the vast, unpredictable world beyond. But the thought vanished almost as quickly as it came. She knew, better than to cling to such fantasies. Ethan was a free spirit, someone who thrived on exploration and discovery. A place like this could never hold him forever. As the week drew to a close, Maya began preparing herself for the inevitable farewell. She rehearsed what she would say to him, practicing phrases that sounded casual yet heartfelt. "Thank you for everything. I'll miss our talks. Safe travels." Yet no matter how many times she repeated them in her head, the words felt hollow, insufficient to convey the depth of what she truly felt. How could she possibly express how much Ethan's presence had changed her? How could she put into words the way he had made her feel seen and valued, perhaps for the first time in her life? On their final day together, Ethan suggested they spend the afternoon at the cafe by the shore, the same one where they had shared countless conversations over cups of tea. As they sipped their drinks and watched the waves crash against the rocks outside, an awkward silence settled between them. Maya fidgeted with the handle of her mug, avoiding Ethan's gaze. She wanted to tell him to confess the feelings that had been building inside her ever since they met, but the words refused to come out. Each time she opened her mouth, doubt crept in, whispering reminders of why it was better to keep her emotions hidden. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "You know," he began, his tone unusually serious, "meeting you has been unexpected, in the best possible way." Maya looked up, startled by the sincerity in his voice. "Unexpected?" she echoed, unsure of what to say next. He nodded, setting his cup down on the table. "When I arrived here, I thought it would just be another stop on my journey, a quick visit to recharge before moving on. But then I met you, and suddenly this place felt different. You made it special." Her cheeks flushed and she lowered her eyes, unable to meet his gaze. "I didn't do anything," she murmured modestly. "You're the one who brought all these amazing stories and ideas. I'm just me." "That's exactly it," Ethan countered gently. "You're you, and that's enough, more than enough actually." For a fleeting second, Maya considered telling him everything, the way her heart raced whenever he smiled, the sleepless nights spent wondering if he felt the same, the ache she already felt at the thought of saying goodbye. But fear held her back. What if he didn't feel the same way? What if her confession ruined the beautiful friendship they had built? She couldn't risk losing that, not when it meant so much to her. Instead, she forced a smile and said, "Well, I'm glad you stopped here, even if it was only for a little while." Ethan studied her face, his expression softening. "Me too," he replied quietly. Then, after a pause, he added, "Maybe someday our paths will cross again." "Maybe," Maya agreed, though deep down she doubted it. People like Ethan didn't return to places like this, not once they'd tasted the thrill of adventure and freedom. Still, she clung to his words like a lifeline, hoping against hope that fate might have other plans. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the beach, Maya walked Ethan to the edge of the shore. His backpack was slung over one shoulder, and he carried his journal tucked securely under his arm. They stood there for a moment, neither speaking, simply taking in the beauty of the scene around them. "I guess this is it," Ethan said finally, breaking the silence. "Time to hit the road again." Maya nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Take care of yourself, okay?" she managed to say, her voice trembling slightly. "You too," Ethan replied, offering her a reassuring smile. "And remember what I said. This isn't goodbye forever. Just see you later." With that, he turned and began walking away, his figure growing smaller and smaller until he disappeared into the distance. Maya remained rooted to the spot, staring after him long after he was gone. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked, them back, refusing to let them fall. Crying wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't bring him back or undo the ache in her chest. As she made her way home, the weight of his absence settled over her like a heavy blanket. The streets felt emptier without him, the air quieter, the colors duller. Everything reminded her of Ethan, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore, the scent of salt in the breeze, the books lining the shelves at the library. Even the cafe where they had spent so many afternoons seemed less inviting now, its cozy corners haunted by memories of their laughter and conversations. In the days that followed, Maya threw herself into her routine, desperate to distract herself from the void Ethan had left behind. She worked longer hours at the library, volunteered at community events, and took extra long walks along the beach, replaying their moments together in her mind. Friends noticed her subdued demeanor and encouraged her to move on, suggesting she try new hobbies or join social groups, but none of it helped. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was missing. One particularly lonely night, as she lay awake staring at the ceiling, Maya realized something important. Ethan hadn't just been a passing acquaintance or a temporary distraction. He had awakened parts of her she hadn't known existed, The courage to speak up, the desire to dream bigger, the belief that she deserved happiness. And though he was gone, those changes remained, etched into her soul like footprints in the sand. With a deep breath, Maya resolved to honor what they had shared, not by clinging to the past, but by embracing the lessons he had taught her. She vowed to step out of her comfort zone, to take risks, and to trust that life had more surprises in store for her. After all, Ethan had shown her that magic could be found in the most unexpected places, even in the quiet corners of a sleepy seaside town. Little did Maya know, however, that their story was far from over. Fate, it seemed, wasn't quite finished weaving its threads. Weeks turned into months, and Maya did her best to adjust to life without Ethan. At first, the absence of his presence felt like a gaping hole in her daily routine. The beach walks that once brought her so much joy now carried a bittersweet edge, reminding her of their shared moments under the sun and stars. Even the books she read seemed less enchanting without someone to discuss them with. Yet as time passed, Maya found herself slowly adapting, learning to navigate the world again on her own terms. She threw herself into work at the library, organizing book clubs and hosting storytelling sessions for children. Her coworkers noticed how much effort she put into these activities, but they also saw the quiet sadness lingering in her eyes. "You should get out more," her friend Priya suggested one afternoon during their lunch break. "There's a new cafe opening downtown tomorrow night. Why don't you come with us?" Maya hesitated, unsure if she was ready to step back into social settings. "I'm not really good at meeting new people," she admitted softly, stirring her tea absent-mindedly. "Besides, I have too much going on at the library." Priya gave her a knowing look. "That's just an excuse, and you know it. You can't keep hiding behind your books forever, Maya. Life is happening right outside those shelves, waiting for you to join in." Though Maya brushed off Priya's words with a polite smile, they lingered in her mind long after their conversation ended. Deep down, she knew her friend was right. Hiding away wouldn't bring Ethan back or fill the emptiness inside her. But moving forward felt daunting, almost impossible. How could she open herself up to new experiences when her heart still ached for something or someone she believed she'd lost forever? Despite her reservations, Maya decided to take small steps toward change. She started attending local events, forcing herself to mingle even when every fiber of her being wanted to retreat into the shadows. It wasn't easy. Conversations often felt forced, and laughter didn't come naturally anymore. Still, she persisted, determined to honor the promise she had made to herself, to live fully, even if it meant doing so alone. One crisp autumn morning, as Maya sorted through a stack of donated books at the library, she came across an envelope tucked between the pages of a worn-out novel. Curious, she opened it and found a single sheet of paper inside. The handwriting was familiar, clean, confident strokes that immediately brought Ethan to mind. Her breath caught in her throat as she began reading. "Dear Maya, I hope this letter finds her well. I've been thinking about you a lot lately, especially during quiet moments when the road feels endless and lonely. Meeting you was one of the unexpected joys of my journey, a reminder that sometimes the most meaningful connections happen when we least expect them. Your kindness and wisdom stayed with me long after I left your beautiful town. You taught me things I didn't realize I needed to learn: the value of stillness, the beauty of simplicity, and the power of listening without judgment. For that, I'll always be grateful. I don't know what the future holds, but wherever my travels take me, I carry a piece of your world with me. Thank you for sharing it with me. Take care." Ethan. Maya read the letter over and over, her hands trembling slightly. Tears welled up in her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, gratitude, and maybe even hope. Ethan hadn't forgotten her. He remembered their time together fondly, cherishing the same memories that had become so precious to her. Though the letter didn't promise anything concrete, it reignited a spark within Maya that she thought had dimmed forever. Over the next few days, she couldn't stop thinking about Ethan's words. They resonated deeply, echoing truths she had begun to rediscover on her own. Slowly, she allowed herself to imagine a different kind of future, one where love wasn't confined by distance or circumstance. Maybe, just maybe, their paths would cross again someday. And if they did, she vowed to be braver, more honest about her feelings. Inspired by the letter, Maya decided to write back. Sitting at her desk late one evening, pen in hand, she poured her heart onto the page. Dear Ethan, your letter arrived like a gift from the universe, a reminder that some connections transcend time and space. I miss our talks, the way you made me feel seen and valued in ways I never imagined possible. Your stories opened doors in my mind, while your presence awakened parts of my soul that had been asleep for far too long. I won't pretend I haven't thought about you since you left. There are moments when I wish you were here sharing this quiet little corner of the world with me. But I understand why you need to roam, to chase horizons and collect stories like treasures. That's who you are, and I admire that about you. Wherever you go, know that you've left a lasting mark on this place and on me. I hope our paths cross again, whether it's tomorrow or years from now. Until then, take care of yourself and keep writing your adventures. With warmth, Maya sealing the letter in an envelope, Maya mailed it the next morning, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. She didn't know if Ethan would receive it or respond, but sending it gave her a sense of closure, or perhaps a beginning. Writing to him had reminded her of the strength she had gained since his departure. She was no longer the same shy girl who struggled to speak her truth. Ethan had helped her grow, and for that she would always be thankful. As weeks went by, Maya resumed her efforts to embrace life fully. She joined a writing group at the community center, inspired by Ethan's journals and her own desire to tell stories. Sharing her work with others was terrifying at first, but the encouragement she received fueled her confidence. She even started sketching scenes from her favorite books, mimicking the way Ethan used art to complement his words. Then, one rainy afternoon, as Maya sat in her usual spot at the seaside cafe, sipping hot chocolate and jotting notes in her notebook, something extraordinary happened. A figure appeared in the doorway, shaking raindrops from their coat. When he looked up, their eyes met across the room and Maya froze, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. It was Ethan. He stood there for a moment, soaked but smiling warmly, before making his way toward her table. "Hey," he said softly, his voice carrying the same gentle tone she remembered. "Mind if I join you?" Maya stared at him, unable to believe her eyes. Was this real? Or was she dreaming? Finally, she managed to nod, gesturing for him to sit. What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan chuckled, running a hand through his damp hair. "Long story short, I realized I left something important behind and I couldn't leave it unfinished." Maya's pulse quickened. "What did you leave behind?" she asked cautiously, afraid to let her hopes rise too high. Ethan leaned forward, his gaze locking onto hers. "You." The room seemed to spin around Maya as his words sank in. She blinked rapidly, trying to process what he had just said. "But why? I thought you loved traveling, exploring new places." "I do," Ethan replied earnestly, "but none of those places compared to the peace I found here, with you. You made me see that home isn't just a physical place. It's the people who make you feel whole. And somewhere along the way I realized I'd already found mine, with you." Tears pricked at the corners of Maya's eyes, but this time, they were tears of joy. For so long, she had convinced herself that Ethan belonged to the world, not to her. Yet here he was, choosing her, choosing this quiet seaside town over all the adventures he could have pursued. "I didn't think you'd come back," Maya confessed, her voice trembling. "I thought I'd lost you." "You never lost me," Ethan said gently. "Not really. I've been carrying you with me everywhere I went. But now I want to stay, for good, if you'll have me." Maya took a deep breath, letting the enormity of his words wash over her. Then with a smile that lit up her entire face, she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "I'll have you." And just like that, the pieces of their story fell into place, weaving together threads of past, present, and future. The boy who had wandered into her life unexpectedly had returned, bringing with him the promise of a new chapter, one filled with love, growth, and endless possibilities. The rain had stopped by the time Maya and Ethan left the cafe, leaving the streets glistening under the soft glow of streetlights. The air smelled fresh and clean, carrying with it the faint scent of wet earth and salt from the nearby ocean. As they walked side by side, neither spoke immediately, each lost in their own thoughts yet acutely aware of the other's presence. For Maya, this moment felt surreal, like stepping into a dream she hadn't dared to believe could come true. Ethan's confession had turned her world upside down, but in the best possible way. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "So, how have you been?" he asked, his tone light, but tinged with curiosity. "What's new since I last saw you?" Maya hesitated for a moment, unsure where to begin. So much had changed since his departure, and yet so much remained the same. "Well," she started slowly, "I've been keeping busy at the library, started leading book clubs and storytelling sessions for kids. And—" she paused, glancing at him shyly. "I joined a writing group." Ethan's eyes lit up with genuine interest. "Really? That's amazing. Do you like it?" She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "It's been challenging, but also rewarding. I never thought I'd share my work with others, but it feels good to put myself out there, kind of like what you do with your journals." "That's incredible, Maya," Ethan said warmly, his admiration evident. "You've always had such a thoughtful way of seeing the world. I'm glad you're finding ways to express that." His words made her cheeks flush, but she appreciated them more than she could say. Encouragement like this was rare for her, especially from someone whose opinion mattered so much. "Thank you," she murmured softly. "And what about you? What brought you back here after all this time?" Ethan sighed, his expression growing reflective. "Honestly, it wasn't one thing, it was everything. Every place I visited reminded me of something you'd said or shown me. Every sunset looked less vibrant without you there to see it. At first I told myself it was just nostalgia, that I'd get over it eventually. But no matter where I went, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd left something unfinished here." He paused, turning, to look at her directly. "When I wrote that letter, I didn't expect anything in return. But when your reply arrived, it hit me. I wasn't ready to let go of us, not yet, maybe not ever." Maya's heart swelled at his honesty. It took immense courage for someone like Ethan, a wanderer who thrived on freedom, to admit he wanted to stay in one place for someone else. "I wasn't sure if you'd even read my letter," she admitted quietly. "I kept wondering if I'd imagined the connection we had." "You didn't imagine it," Ethan assured her firmly. "That connection is real, Maya. It's why I'm here now. I don't want to run anymore, not when I finally know what I'm running toward." They continued walking, their steps slowing as they approached the beach. The tide was low, revealing smooth patches of sand dotted with seashells and driftwood. Without saying a word, they both sat down, letting the cool breeze wash over them. For a while, they simply listened to the rhythmic crash of the waves, content in each other's company. Eventually, Ethan spoke again. "Do you remember the first time we met? Right here on this beach?" Maya smiled, nodding. "How could I forget? You were sitting on that big rock, sketching in your journal. I almost walked away because I didn't want to bother you." "But you didn't," Ethan pointed out, his voice teasing. "And thank goodness for that. If you had, I might never have discovered how wonderful this town and its people are." "Funny," Maya replied, her tone wistful. "I used to think this place was too small, too ordinary, but then you showed up and made everything feel special. Even the tiniest details seemed magical through your eyes." "That's because they are magical," Ethan countered gently. "You just needed someone to remind you to notice them. And, honestly, Maya, you did the same for me. You taught me the beauty of stillness, of being present in the moment. Before I met you, I was always chasing the next adventure, thinking that happiness lay somewhere else, But you helped me realize it doesn't have to be that complicated. His words struck a chord deep within her. I guess we've both changed, haven't we? She mused aloud. In different ways, but still. Yes, Ethan agreed. And maybe that's why this feels right. Because we're not the same people we were before. We've grown, together and apart, and now we're meeting in the middle. As the night wore on, they talked about everything and nothing. Their favorite books, childhood memories, dreams for the future. Maya found herself opening up in ways she never had before, sharing pieces of herself she'd kept hidden, even from Miu, those closest to her. With Ethan, it felt safe to be vulnerable, to let down the walls she'd built around her heart. For his part, Ethan listened intently, asking questions and offering insights that made Maya feel truly understood. He shared stories from his travels, describing breathtaking landscapes and unforgettable encounters, but always brought the conversation back to her, to the life she led, the passions she pursued, the person she was becoming. By the time they headed home, the sky had begun to lighten with the first hints of dawn. Neither of them felt tired. Instead, they were energized by the hours spent reconnecting, rediscovering the bond they had formed months ago. As they stood outside Maya's door, Ethan hesitated, unsure of what to say next. I should probably go, he said finally, though his feet remained rooted to the spot. But can I see you again tomorrow? And the day after that? And however many days you'll let me? Maya laughed softly, touched by his earnestness. Of course, she replied. I'd like that. Relief washed over Ethan's face, and he smiled brightly. Good, because I'm not planning on going anywhere anytime soon. With that, he leaned in and hugged her tightly, holding her close as though afraid she might disappear. Maya rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. In that moment, she knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that Ethan was exactly where he belonged, with her. Over the following weeks, Ethan settled into the rhythm of life in the seaside town. He rented a small cottage near the beach, close enough to visit Maya often but far enough to maintain a sense of independence. Together, they explored familiar places with fresh eyes, finding new wonders in the everyday. They revisited the lighthouse, the cliffs, and the cafe, creating memories layered atop the old ones. One afternoon, as they strolled along the shore, Ethan pulled out his journal and began sketching the scene before them. Maya watched him curiously, noting how effortlessly he captured the essence of the moment. You're really talented, she remarked. Have you ever thought about publishing your work? Ethan shrugged modestly. Maybe someday. For now, I'm happy just documenting the journey. Besides, I think I found a new muse. Oh? Maya teased, raising an eyebrow. Who might that be? Ethan grinned, closing the distance between them. You, of course. Who else inspires me to see the world differently? Maya blushed, but her smile betrayed her delight. Well, if you ever decide to write a book, I want to be the first to read it. It's a deal, Ethan promised, sealing it with a playful wink. Through these moments, Maya realized something profound. Love wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was about showing up, day after day, and choosing to build something meaningful together. Whether it was sharing quiet evenings at home, exploring hidden corners of the town, or simply sitting side by side watching the sunset, every interaction deepened their connection, and though neither of them knew what the future held, they faced it hand in hand, grateful for the second chance fate had given them. Their story wasn't perfect. It was messy, unpredictable, and full of uncertainties, but it was theirs. And that made all the difference. As the days turned into weeks, Maya and Ethan's bond continued to deepen. Their time together became a seamless blend of laughter, quiet moments, and shared dreams. The once familiar streets of the seaside town now felt alive with new meaning, as if every corner held a memory waiting to be created. For Maya, this transformation was nothing short of miraculous. She had always thought of herself as someone who preferred solitude, content to live within the confines of her own world. But Ethan's presence had unlocked something inside her, a desire to connect, to share, to truly live. Ethan, too, found himself changing in ways he hadn't anticipated. His restless spirit, the one that had driven him across continents and through endless horizons, had begun to settle. It wasn't that he no longer craved adventure. Rather, he realized that adventure didn't have to mean leaving everything behind. Adventure could be found in the everyday, in the way Maya saw beauty in the smallest details or how she made ordinary moments feel extraordinary. Together, they discovered joy in simplicity, cooking meals side by side, stargazing on clear nights, or wandering aimlessly along the beach, collecting seashells and skipping stones. One morning, as they sat sipping coffee on Ethan's porch, overlooking the ocean, Maya broached a topic that had been on her mind for some time. "Do you ever miss traveling?" she asked hesitantly, stirring her cup absently. "I mean, do you regret staying here?" Ethan set his mug down and turned to face her, his expression thoughtful. "It's not about missing it or regretting anything," he replied after a pause. "Traveling will always be a part of me. It's who I am. But I've learned that home isn't just a place you carry inside you. It's also the people who make you feel grounded. And right now, this feels like home." Maya's cheeks flushed at his words, but she pressed on. "What about your writing? Don't you worry that staying in one place might limit your inspiration?" Ethan chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Actually, it's the opposite. Being here, with you, has given me more ideas than I know what to do with. There's so much to explore even in this little town. Plus," he grinned mischievously, "having you around gives me plenty of material." Maya raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh, really? Like what?" "Well," Ethan began, ticking points off on his fingers. "There's the way you light up when you talk about books, the way you hum under your breath without realizing it, the way you get lost in thought while staring at the sea. Need I go on?" She laughed, shaking her head. "You're ridiculous." "Maybe," Ethan admitted with a smirk. "But I'm serious about one thing. You inspire me, more than any mountain view or bustling city ever could." His sincerity left Maya speechless. She had spent so much of her life doubting her worth, convinced that she was too quiet, too ordinary to leave a lasting impression on anyone. Yet here was Ethan, telling her she was extraordinary, not because of grand achievements or bold actions, but simply because of who she was. Encouraged by his openness, Maya decided to take a step outside her comfort zone. At the next meeting of her writing group, she shared a piece she had written, a short story inspired by her experiences with Ethan. It was raw and vulnerable, filled with emotions she had struggled to articulate before. When she finished reading, the room erupted into applause, and several members praised her courage and creativity. For the first time, Maya allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had something worthwhile to offer the world. Word of her talent spread quickly, and soon, Maya was invited to lead workshops at the community center. Teaching others how to write gave her a sense of purpose she hadn't known she needed. Watching participants pour their hearts onto the page reminded her of her own journey, the fear of vulnerability, the thrill of discovery, the joy of finding one's voice. Through it all, Ethan remained her biggest supporter, attending readings and offering constructive feedback whenever she asked for it. Meanwhile, Ethan began working on a project of his own, a collection of essays and sketches documenting his travels, interwoven with reflections on the lessons he had learned along the way. He often joked that Maya would feature prominently in the final chapter, though neither of them knew exactly how their story would end. For now, they were content to focus on the present, cherishing each day as it came. Their connection wasn't without challenges, of course. There were moments of uncertainty, times when old fears resurfaced. Maya occasionally worried that Ethan might grow restless again, that the call of distant lands would prove too strong to resist. Ethan, for his part, sometimes doubted whether he deserved the happiness Maya brought into his life, haunted by memories of relationships he'd left behind in his travels. But instead of letting these doubts drive them apart, they chose to face them together, talking openly about their feelings and reassuring each other whenever insecurities arose. One evening, as they walked along the beach under a canopy of stars, Ethan stopped suddenly and turned to Maya. "Can I ask you something?" he said, his tone unusually serious. "Of course," Maya replied, sensing the gravity in his voice. "What made you decide to trust me again?" he asked. "After everything, after I left, after all those months apart, why did you let me back in?" Maya hesitated, searching for the right words. "It wasn't easy," she admitted finally. "For a long time I told myself I couldn't rely on anyone. Not fully. That keeping people at arm's length was safer. But then you came back, and I realized something important. Love isn't about protecting yourself from pain. It's about taking risks even when you're scared. And when you showed up at the cafe that rainy afternoon, I knew I wanted to try." Ethan's eyes softened, and he reached out to take her hand. "I'm glad you did," he said softly. "Because I don't want to imagine my life without you in it." The sincerity in his voice brought tears to Maya's eyes, but they were tears of gratitude and hope. She squeezed his hand tightly, feeling a surge of confidence she hadn't felt before. "Me neither," she whispered. Over the following months, Maya and Ethan began dreaming bigger, imagining ways they could combine their passions to create something meaningful. One day, while browsing through the tiny bookstore where they had first bonded over literature, inspiration struck. "What if we opened our own place?" Ethan suggested excitedly. "A cozy spot where people can read, write, and share stories. A space that feels like home." Maya's eyes widened in surprise. "You'd really want to do that?" "Absolutely," Ethan replied without hesitation. "Think about it. A cafe with shelves lined with books, comfy chairs for writers maybe, even a corner for art displays. We could host poetry readings, book signings, creative workshops, and it could be amazing." The idea took root in Maya's mind, growing stronger with each passing day. Together they poured their energy into making it a reality, pooling their savings and enlisting the help of friends and neighbors. The process was challenging. There were permits to secure, renovations to oversee, and countless decisions to make, but every obstacle only strengthened their resolve. Finally, after months of hard work, their dream came to life. Nestled between two weathered buildings near the shore, the cafe bookstore hybrid welcomed its first visitors on a crisp spring morning. Large windows framed views of the ocean, inviting sunlight to spill across wooden floors and shelves stacked with books. The air smelled of freshly brewed coffee and paper, mingling with the salty breeze drifting in from outside. In one corner, a bulletin board displayed flyers for upcoming events, while another showcased sketches and paintings contributed by local artists. Maya stood behind the counter, her heart swelling with pride as customers filed in, marveling at the charm of the space. Ethan wandered among them, chatting animatedly and helping children pick out picture books. Watching him interact with people, seeing the joy on their faces, filled Maya with a sense of fulfillment she hadn't known was possible. That evening, as they closed up shop and settled onto the porch with cups of tea, Ethan looked at Maya with a smile that spoke volumes. "You know," he said, "this place is kind of like us. A little bit of everything, all coming together to create something beautiful." Maya nodded, her gaze drifting toward the horizon. "And just like us, it's proof that sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them." Hand in hand, they watched the sun dip below the waves, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. Though neither knew what the future held, they faced it together, ready to embrace whatever adventures lay ahead. After all, they had already proven that love and life wasn't about finding perfection. It was about building something real, imperfect, and infinitely precious. The cafe bookstore quickly became a cornerstone of the seaside town, drawing in locals and visitors alike with its warm atmosphere and unique charm. People came not just for the books or the coffee, but for the sense that this place was alive, buzzing with creativity, conversation, and connection. Maya and Ethan worked tirelessly to keep it running smoothly, dividing their responsibilities naturally. Maya handled the literary side, curating book collections and organizing events, while Ethan managed the artistic aspects, decorating the space and collaborating with local artists. Together, they created an environment where everyone felt welcome, whether they were lifelong readers or simply looking for a quiet corner to sit and think. One sunny afternoon, as Maya arranged new arrivals on the shelves, she overheard two customers chatting near the window. "This is my favorite spot in town," one of them said, gesturing around the cozy room. "It feels like home." Maya froze mid-task, her heart swelling at the comment. Home. It was a word she had once associated only with solitude and routine. But now it meant something entirely different. It meant laughter shared over cups of tea, late-night brainstorming sessions with Ethan, and the steady hum of life filling every corner of the cafe. This place wasn't just a business. It was a reflection of who they were together, a blend of their passions, dreams, and quirks. Ethan appeared beside her moments later, carrying a tray of freshly baked pastries. "Did you hear that?" he asked, nodding toward the customers. "I did," Maya replied, smiling softly. "It's perfect." "It really is," Ethan agreed, his eyes twinkling. "But none of it would be possible without you. You're the heart of this place, Maya." Her cheeks flushed at the compliment, but she shook her head modestly. "We both are. Neither of us could have done this alone." He didn't argue, instead wrapping an arm around her shoulders and pulling her close. "True, but don't underestimate how much you inspire me. Every day I see the way people respond to your kindness, your ideas, your vision. They love this place because they love you." Maya leaned into him, feeling a deep sense of gratitude, not just for Ethan's words, but for the journey that had brought them here. She thought back to the shy, uncertain version of herself who had first met Ethan on the beach. That girl would never have imagined standing in a bustling cafe, surrounded by people who admired and appreciated her. Yet here she was, living proof that growth often comes from taking chances, even when those chances feel terrifying. As the weeks turned into months, the cafe continued to thrive. Poetry readings filled the evenings with rhythm and emotion, while weekend workshops encouraged children and adults alike to explore their creativity. Local musicians performed acoustic sets in the corner, their melodies blending seamlessly with the sound of pages turning and cups clinking. The bulletin board remained a hub of activity, covered in flyers for art shows, book clubs, and community gatherings. It was more than just a space. It was a meeting point, a sanctuary, a celebration of everything that made the town special. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves swirled outside the windows, Ethan approached Maya with a mischievous grin. "I've been thinking," he began, setting down a stack of journals on the counter. "What if we took this whole thing a step further?" Maya raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Further? What do you mean?" "Well," Ethan explained, leaning against the counter, "we've built something amazing here, right? A place where people can connect through stories and art. But what if we expanded that idea beyond these walls? What if we started hosting retreats, writing workshops, photography classes, even guided hikes along the cliffs? We could bring people together in ways they've never experienced before." Maya's eyes widened as the possibilities unfolded in her mind. "That's incredible," she breathed, "but also a lot of work." "Exactly," Ethan said, his enthusiasm unwavering. "Which is why we'd tackle it together, just like we always do." And so, they dove headfirst into planning. They reached out to writers, photographers, and artists, inviting them to lead sessions during the retreats. They partnered with nearby bed and breakfast to accommodate guests and designed itineraries that balanced structured activities with free time for exploration. Word spread quickly, and soon, reservations poured in from across the country. People were eager to escape the chaos of city life and immerse themselves in the tranquility of the seaside town and the creative energy of the cafe. The first retreat took place on a chilly winter weekend, with frost clinging to the grass and the ocean shimmering under pale sunlight. Participants arrived bundled in scarves and coats, clutching notebooks and cameras, brimming with excitement. Over the course of 3 days, they wrote, photographed, painted, and explored, guided by instructors who shared Maya and Ethan's passion for storytelling. By the end of the retreat, friendships had formed, inspiration had blossomed, and many participants vowed to return. Watching the transformation unfold, Maya felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This was what she had always wanted, to create opportunities for others to express themselves, to find joy in the act of creation. And seeing Ethan's pride as he watched the retreat succeed reminded her of how far they had come since their initial meeting on the beach. Late one evening, as the last group of retreat attendees gathered around a bonfire on the shore, Maya and Ethan slipped away to take a quiet walk along the water's edge. The stars above sparkled brightly, reflecting off the calm surface of the sea. For a long moment neither spoke, content to savor the peacefulness of the night. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "Do you remember the first time we walked here?" he asked, his voice soft. Maya nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Of course. You were sitting on that rock, sketching in your journal. I almost turned around and left." "But you didn't," Ethan pointed out, his tone teasing yet tender. "And look where we are now." She glanced at him, her heart swelling with emotion. "I never imagined any of this when I first met you. Back then, I thought happiness meant staying safe, keeping things simple. But you showed me that true happiness comes from stepping outside your comfort zone, from embracing change and taking risks. And you taught me that adventure doesn't have to mean leaving everything behind," Ethan added, his gaze steady. "Sometimes the greatest adventures happen when you stay put and build something meaningful." They stopped walking, standing side by side as the waves lapped gently at their feet. Ethan turned to face Maya, his expression serious yet full of warmth. "I want you to know something," he said quietly. "No matter what happens next, whether we host 100 more retreats or spend our days reading books by the fire, I'll always be grateful for this. For you. For us." Tears pricked at the corners of Maya's eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude for the boy who had wandered into her life unexpectedly, for the man who had chosen to stay, and for the future they were building together. "Me too," she whispered, reaching out to take his hand. "Always." As they stood there under the vast expanse of sky, surrounded by the rhythmic crash of waves and the distant glow of the bonfire, Maya realized something important. Life wasn't about finding perfection. It was about finding the people and places that made your heart sing, no matter how imperfect they might be. And in this moment, with Ethan by her side, the cafe thriving, and the world stretching endlessly before them, she knew she had found exactly what she needed. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be challenges, uncertainties, and moments of doubt, but as long as they faced them together, Maya believed they could overcome anything. Because love, she had learned, wasn't about grand gestures or fairy tale endings. It was about showing up, day after day, and choosing to build something real, something messy, beautiful, and infinitely precious. And so, hand in hand, they walked back toward the glowing lights of the cafe, ready to embrace whatever adventures lay ahead.